Good morning, everyone. Today, today I'm going to be covering the cancellation documents, one for the cancellation of contract and cancellation, release of the buyer's deposit and cancellation of escrow. That's one document. The second document will be the cancellation of listing. Before I get into that, however, I just want to talk about new forms coming up. There are a total of 11 documents that are either brand new coming up in June of 2018 and 8 that are going to be revised and released in June of 2018. So we have that coming up. In the next week or two, we'll have more information on it. The documents and forms themselves are not even available yet. They'll be becoming available starting in June of 2018. But we're going to have information on it. We'll be sending it out to you, so you'll have ample time to review it. Contact your broker if you have any questions regarding the revisions or the new documents, and we'll be happy to handle and answer any questions or concerns or thoughts you might have regarding that. So that's coming up within the next couple of weeks, and then the revisions and new forms will be effective starting in June of 2018. So now moving on to the cancellation of contract, release of deposit, and cancellation of escrow. Keep in mind that a real estate transaction is a bilateral agreement, which means you need two people to enter into an agreement. And if you are going to cancel that agreement, again, it takes two parties to cancel. No one party, no buyer, no seller has the ability to unilaterally cancel a contract. The most common dispute that comes out of this is if a buyer or seller are not removing their contingencies in the proper amount of time. Either party can get emotional about it and decide, I'm going to cancel them and move on. Well, it's not quite that simple. First of all, you need to send out a notice to perform, whether it's to the buyer or seller. So that is the first step before you even talk about completing a cancellation document. If the other side, whether it's the buyer or seller, and it can work either way, decides that they don't respond and they do not remove their contingency, even after the notice to perform has been submitted to them, then you can send out the cancellation of contract. The cancellation of contract is a two-part form. It's one page, but it's a two-part form. The top part being the cancellation of the contract itself. And then you'll have an A, B, C, D, E, F, G box that you can check to state the reason, and you can read through that yourself, to state the reason as to why your client is canceling and sending out the cancellation of contract. The second part of the form, the bottom half of the page, is the release of deposit and cancellation of escrow. And again, there's a box A, B, C, and D. You can read through that yourself, and it'll give the reason. Are you going to give the full deposit back? Are you going to keep the deposit if you have the seller side, if you're going to request that? And signatures. So both buyer and seller need to sign in two spots on this one page. The top part being they agree with the cancellation, and the bottom part being the deposit, the release of the deposit, whether it's going to be all, a portion, or none of the contingencies. So keep in mind to get the correct box checked. And on each of those sections, if the boxes do not pertain directly to your situation, at the bottom on G, you can just check the box other and describe exactly why your client, buyer or seller, is canceling the contract. Same is true on the release of deposit and cancellation. Again, there's a D box, it can be checked, and you just explain what the agreement is as far regarding the deposit. If it's going to be a partial release, a full release, or if there's special circumstances involved that need to be fully explained, again, check box D and fully explain it. The important part is to get both signatures, buyer and seller signatures, on this document in two different places. We cannot approve the document with only one signature, a buyer signature or a seller signature. And it is required that we have two. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions regarding this on how to handle the situation in your special circumstance, please contact your broker, Jeff Green up in Northern California, Omar Hellman in the LA, Orange County area, Mary Jane Morris in Temecula, Marietta, or myself here in San Diego. So please feel free to reach out to us and explain the situation and determine what is the best way to handle the cancellation and what should happen. The second cancellation I want to talk about today is cancellation of listing. Now, this is a cancellation between the seller and us, the brokerage. So again, there's only one signature needed here, and that is from the seller signing that they agree with and want the cancellation of their listing. The second would be from the broker, myself here in San Diego, again, Jeff up in Northern California, Mary Jane or Omar. And you need our signature on that too. And I'm sure your seller's going to insist on that. We want to see your broker's signature on here. This releases all liability from us regarding the cancellation, and the seller and I is talking now. And we certainly don't want to be in breach of our agreement, and we certainly don't want to owe the brokerage any money. So that's all covered in this cancellation document. If there's going to be, and probably the main part of this is compensation. You know, it's important up front when you take the listing to outline the terms of the agreement. So for example, and I see this not a lot, but I do see it, where an agent will take a listing, put out money for marketing, for advertising, and then the seller will come in and pull the rug out from under our agent and say, I want a cancellation. I changed my mind. I'm not going to sell my home. You need to make sure you cover yourself. You know, if it's not in the listing agreement, when it comes to canceling, it gives you a second shot at negotiating whether you can recoup some of your expenses or not from the seller if they're stopping the listing prior to the expiration date. But make sure, you know, it's so much easier to cover it up front when you're taking the listing. Just say, hey, listen, you know, if this transaction from start to finish goes through and it does not sell, then that's on me, the real estate agent. I'm not going to be able to, you know, it's just part of my doing business. But if you, the seller, decide not to sell halfway through when I'm in the process of marketing and paying for the marketing for this particular listing, then, you know, we need to talk about, you know, if you have the right to cancel, but we have a right to hold you to the contract as well. So let's, you know, talk about reimbursement of my expenses here. My expenses for marketing, for newspaper advertising, whatever your marketing plan is, make sure you cover yourself in that. Now, I said there's a second shot you have when it comes to signing the cancellation. Again, if the seller decides to cancel the listing prior to the expiration date, you can come back in and have them sign the cancellation, but you're going to have a discussion on them regarding recouping your expenses if that's what you want to do. So again, know these forms. Understand that both cancellation forms, it takes two signatures. On the contract, it takes buyer and seller signature twice on the same page. On the cancellation of listing, it takes both the seller's signature as well as the broker's signature to make the cancellation effective. If you have any questions, contact your broker. I hope you're all having a great day and a great week, and I look forward to talking to you again. Bye. Very good.